Hi and welcome to Messy Mending. This channel is meant to be honest about sewing and mistakes are included. Text will be included along with the video so you can pause and follow along. I suggest you watch the whole video and make sure it makes sense and is what you are looking for before beginning, but you do you. Today we are going to be adding pleats to a dress. This particular dress has a button bracket up the front, but you can do this with any kind of dress. You may do certain things differently depending on what you are adding pleats to. There is no right way to do it, although there may be some wrong ways. Here is one way to add pleats. First, I'm going to try on the dress and measure the extra material. To do this, I pulled the dress to one side so all the extra was in one place and measured from the top of my hip to the outer seam of the dress. I personally have 5 inches of extra material from my waist to the outer seam. I'm measuring it at the waist because that's where I want my pleats to be. Now I am going to subtract an inch from this measurement so it isn't too tight when I get done so I can still move in the dress. Next I'm going to multiply this number times 2 because the material was double thick in my measurement, so I was only actually measuring half of it. I need this to be 8 inches narrower total. You can measure the dress differently. The important thing is just to know how much narrower the dress needs to be when you are done. Between the two sides of the front and the two halves of the back, I'm going to have 4 sections of pleats. So I'm going to divide the number that I did before by 4 so that I know how much I'm taking in each section. So I will need to take the dress in 2 inches per quarter. An easier way to do this is to take the original measurement, subtract 1, then divide that number by 2. The size pleat I'm going to take the dress in by is 1 inch per pleat, so I will need 2 pleats per quarter. Now I'm going to measure from the button bracket in the front to where I want my first pleat to be. This will depend on the person where you want it. Keep in mind how many pleats you are adding and what height you want them at. Make a 1/2 inch fold in the material if you're taking the dress in an inch per pleat and pin it. You may find it helpful to iron the pleat in before you pin it. Measure the distance you want to the next pleat. Next, I'm going to repeat the whole process on the other side of the dress using the same measurements as before so the pleats are symmetrical. Now I'm going to add pleats in the back. To do this, I measure the width of the back at the level I want the pleats. I divide that number by 2. Now I'm going to use this measurement to calculate where the center is. To fold the center pleat, I basically make 2 normal pleats right next to each other facing away from each other. Now I'm going to measure to where I want my next back pleat. It can be anywhere, so I'm just going to go off of what looks nice to me. I'm going to use the same measurement on the other side. Now I carefully iron all of the pleats. You may choose to iron them as you go. Here I'm moving to a sewing machine. This can also be done by hand, or you can do a blind stitch instead of a straight stitch. Because my machine is already threaded, I chose to tie the new thread to the old and pull it through to change to the new color. This doesn't always work, but it makes it a little easier. The machine seems to be missing a few screws, but aren't we all? We're just going to pretend like we didn't see that. Now I'm going to make sure everything is working on the machine on a scrap of material that is similar to what I'm sewing, because most machines hate me. The next step is to sew the pleats into place. I'm going to sew one long seam from one button bracket to the other. As with everything else, this is not the only way to do this, but it's the way I have chosen. This dress has a belt loop, so I'm going to end the seam, cut the thread, and hop over to the other side to continue.